Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this MOOC, which is on web accessibility and how to test a website, which is part 2 following on from a session earlier this week. The sponsoring company is Cognizant, whose mission is to maximize and create opportunities for all. I'm Susie, and I'm a data scientist at Onyx Insight, working in the renewable energy sector. I'm also an instructor, mentor, and fellow with Code First Girls. If you have any questions specific to Code First Girls, please pop them in the YouTube chat and I will try my best to reply during the session. We also have time at the end of the session for Q&A, so please do add your questions throughout. I will also share a couple of links in the chat during this MOOC. First, the page to sign up for upcoming MOOCs, and in addition, a page to sign up for upcoming nano degree places, which are a great opportunity to learn some advanced coding skills and move into a technical role. Finally, as this MOOC is the second of a two-part series, I'll share the link to the first part so you can revisit or watch that if you wish. The recording for this session will also be available after the session. With that, I'll introduce Fabiana. Fabiana is a front-end developer at BT and a CFG web development instructor and fellow. Fabiana joined BT after being selected for a 4-month bootcamp run by Code First Girls to start her career as a software developer. Hi,
Hello.
Fabiana. How are you doing?
All good. I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, ready for this second session.
Okay, perfect. Over to you.
Okay, great. So I will turn on the captions on the slide, so you should be able to see them. Right. So yeah, I will introduce myself. I already done that on the first MOOC, but I'm aware that maybe someone didn't have the chance to join the first one. So here I am. I'm Fabiana. I work as a front-end developer, as Susie said. My interests are around UX, UI, and accessibility. I'm not an accessibility expert. However, during the past year, I had the chance to research on accessibility, to prepare presentations, to implement accessibility on ongoing projects. And I'm studying to attain a certification early next year. So today I'm here to share what I'm learning. So I hope that I will ignite some interest around accessibility. That's what happened to me. So hopefully I can transfer that to you. So let's start with the session plan. So we will go through a quick recap of the last session. We will have, we'll introduce the importance of semantic HTML to build an accessible website. And then we'll jump into tutorials. So we will take a look at in practice what we can do, what we can implement on our code to make it more accessible. Then we will have a quick demo on how you can test your website, which tools we can use, and then just a summary at the end. So let's start. Quick recap on the last session. So the key areas where, well, accessibility is everyone's responsibility. So that means that, well, first of all, if you're interested on accessibility, you want to start the conversation and introduce the topic in your team, you don't need to feel that that's your only job and it's only up to you, and you are responsible for everything. So that means only that you're going to start the conversation and involve your colleagues, the rest of the team in general. The whole point is not expecting that accessibility will be carried out only from the accessibility expert, because every phase of the projects are touched by accessibility. So from the design to the development, the testing part, the production of the contents. So everyone should be aware of why accessibility is important, and everyone should be able to do their part. Accessibility is an essential part of a digital project, and we need to include it from the very start of a project because it will make our life easier. So it's not only the right thing to do, but it will be very much easier and less expensive in terms of time, effort, and money to include accessibility since the beginning. And again, you don't need to be an expert on accessibility to start to talk about it and start a conversation with your colleagues. Right, so what's next? Well, if you have to take only one thing from this MOOC, I hope that it's about semantic HTML. So the first step we can do towards accessibility is using a semantic HTML to mark up our content. So what it means is that we use HTML5 tags to not only to create the structure of the project of the website, but we also use it to give meaning to the content. So here there are two examples, and they both work in terms of building navigation bar. But on the left side, we are using non-semantic HTML. On the right side, we are doing the same thing, but by using semantic HTML. So on the left side, what we are doing is just using a bunch of divs to build up a, um, a navigation bar. So it visually, by using also CSS, we can make it look as we want. It's going to look as a navigation bar. However, when we are going to use a screen reader to read what it is, it will be able to read only the text. So that means home, about, and contacts. There's nothing wrong in that, but it's not giving important information, useful information, as what it is. Like, okay, you're reading home, about, and contacts, but what what are you? Are you a list? Are you a navigation bar? Are you just plain text? We don't know what it is exactly. If we, instead of using divs, we use semantic HTML as per the example on the right side, when we are going to use a screen reader, the screen reader will be able to, well, first we'll hit the nav tag and it will read out loud. This is a navigation bar, which is awesome. We know already what it is. And then after that, it will say there's a list and there are 3 items on it. And then it will start reading the items by saying also that they are links. So what is giving us is meaning. We are giving meaning to the content. So we are defining what's inside that tags. So this is an example, and then we will have a few more in the next few slides. So after taking a look at the semantic HTML, we will go further and see what else we can do, because the using semantic HTML is very helpful, because it will ensure that at least we are not preventing our users to use the content. We are not preventing screen readers in reading the content. But that's the foundation, right? So that is, by using semantic HTML, we are making sure that the foundations are good, and we can start from there to enhance further the experience. And through these web accessibility tutorials, we will do that. We will try to enhance further the experience of users that have disabilities. So the tutorials are available on the Web Accessibility Tutorials website. That's from W3C, Web Accessibility Initiative. The link of everything you will see on the slides, we will share them at the end of the MOOC. So you will receive an email with all of these links that I'm going to mention during the MOOC. The tutorials are actually 6, but for today we will focus only on the first 4, and then you'll be, if you want to deepen the knowledge, you're free to go to the tutorials online and yeah, go further and explore more. So we'll start with the page structure. So how to create a solid structure by using HTML5, and then we will go ahead with the menu. So how to build navigation bars, how to make sure that they are operable, and then images. So how to add alt text, which is um, not easy as it seems. So when the first time I came across to alt text, I was just thinking, okay, if I'm going to add a description in the alt attribute, then I'll be okay. I'm going to make sure that everyone can access that content. And then I found out that I was doing that in the wrong way. So we will see. There will be examples that hopefully will clarify how we can write them properly. And then, yeah, tables. So we'll take a look at tables if we have time. Otherwise, I will just skip that, and I will just encourage you to take a look at it later on at the end of the MOOC, going to the tutorials website. So let's start. The page structure is split, so the recommendations are 4. So we start with the first one, which is identify the regions in a web page. And we do that by using the markup regions. So the markup regions are 5: header, nav, main, aside, and footer. Usually I use all of them, and aside is optional. It depends on the layout of the web page. Most of the time I have to say that I don't use an aside. It's quite popular on magazines or blogs. Otherwise it's and I don't use that much, but it's still page region. So by using those, we are defining the areas, the main areas of a web page, and we are just, it's going to be very helpful for who is using an assistive technology to understand where they are. So again, if, for example, we are using a screen reader, it will, the when the screen reader is hitting the header before to read space steady ink, it will read, you are on the header region and this is an H1, and then it will read what's inside the H1, and it will read space steady ink. So it's, the screen reader is able to give all this spatial information that for who is accessing the page, and is able to see the page, those information are uh, not necessary because we can identify those areas. There's no need for a reader. But for someone that doesn't have the page in front of and is not able to see the page, have this kind of information is very helpful because they can start to build an idea of the structure of the page, where are the content and where they are on a page. Um, so that is how we can use HTML5 to identify those. Then there's the case where not all the assistive technologies, well, nowadays is becoming pretty rare that assistive technologies, most of them, they support HTML5, but as a fallback, in case assistive technologies they used by users are not the most updated, um, there's the WAI area roles, and we can use them to make sure that for those old or not updated devices, they can still get the same information like header, nav, and main. So what we do is after uh, defining a header, we are also adding the role attribute, and then as a value, we use banner for header, navigation for nav, main for main. So as you can see, they are pretty similar, or at least the meaning is quite similar. And then for a side, we have complementary and content info for footer. So this is, again, we need to think about those implementations as enhancements, like a progressive enhancement. Building, we are starting by using semantic HTML, and then from there we try to improve it, keep improving it, and adding information that could enhance the experience of the user. Now, second thing is labeling regions. So this could be helpful when we have regions similar, like we have, for example, two navigation bars. If we have two navigation bars, then it's good to distinguish them, and we can use that by labeling them. We can use the ARIA label to define the main navigation. So that means that when the screen reader will hit the nav element, it will say this is a navigation bar, and it will say main navigation. So it will be easier to understand which kind of navigation bar. And we also understand that possibly there's another navigation bar with another name. And then in the second example, highlighted in green, what we are doing is using area labeled by, and then we assign the value that we have in the H3 element inside the ID. So we are saying this nav, if you want to, so the screen reader will hit nav and will say nav, this is a navigation bar, table of contents. It will be able to jump from the labeled by, it will read, okay, in here there is a TOC header, and then it will go search for TOC header. It will hit the ID, and it will be able to read the text inside the H3 tag. So yeah, again, it's another enhancement. We are trying to uh, give as much information as possible and let the user know where they are. And then the third point is around headings. So it's a good idea when we think about how to assign headings as the web page, like the digital version of a book. So we have the title, subtitles, and then chapters. And then inside of each chapter, we have like further headings. So we need to think about that the structure of our web page is quite similar in terms of concept as a book. So in that sense, we need to to build the web page by defining a hierarchy of headings. So uh, we cannot uh, start, so we can only have one H1 in each page. And then we can have as many H2, H3, and so on as we want. However, we should respect the hierarchy. So that means that if I have an H2, then if I have an inner heading, I should go for H3 and not skip H3, H4, and then go straight away to H5, for example, because I'm skipping levels. And if, again, uh, someone is coming here using a screen reader, uh, the screen reader will read, this is a H2, and you know, okay, I'm inside of a chapter, let's say, and then it's going ahead, it's reading the text, and then it's saying, I'm a H5. What you're going to think, it's like, oh, did I miss anything? Why I'm already on an H5? Why it's not an H3? So again, we are making this every time that we are assigning HTML tag, we need to think about the meaning. What's the meaning of this? Is this a title? Is this a paragraph? If it's a title, did I already assign an H2? If yes, then this should be an H3. Right. The fourth topic inside page structure is around the content structure. So it's pretty much connected to what we discussed already. So mark up the content on a page in a way that uses appropriate and meaningful elements. So as we mentioned already, when we are writing down the content, we need to think about what is this piece of information. Is this a heading? Is this a navigation bar? And every time we are asking our questions, there's probably an HTML5 tag that is ready for us to be used. So for example, in the right side, you can see that there is a list. So it's in here, there is a UL. So this is another example. If we have a content that is a list, why don't we use a UL or a OL if it's an ordered list, instead of adding there a div and then other divs inside. Visually, we can use CSS to uh, change the aspect as we want, but in terms of meaning, we are not doing the right thing by using a div. If it's a list, let's use the UL. Why we should skip that step? There's no really need to do that. So yep, that was the last one about the page structure. So now we'll jump to another very important element in a page. We cannot imagine a website without a navigation bar. So the W3C is helping us to understand how we can uh, code a good and accessible navigation bar. So again, on the right side, we have an example. So we will go through the three points, and hopefully the example will clear the text. So in terms of structure, the markup menus in a way that reflects their structure and appropriately labels them. So that means that, yeah, let's just, um, follow. If you want to have home as first, then you add it as first. Don't rely on CSS to, swap them. You can do that, but if you can avoid that, it would be great. Why don't you, if you want to, swap the elements, why don't you do that directly from HTML? And then we can use the label, so ARIA label, to give additional information. So if that nav is the main one, we can add main navigation. Just one thing, I didn't say that yet. You can add any value inside the quotes. So it's up to you. Here in this example, we are using main navigation. But if you prefer to say something like primary navigation, or I don't know, anything that makes sense, you can add any value you want. And then let's say that we have a navigation bar that has a second level navigation. So for example, if you take a look at the screenshot at the bottom, let's say we want to build a navigation like that. So that means that the third item, which is space bears. So let's say that space bears has two children. So when we are adding these sub items, we can then specify that those items are in there. They are not hidden, because again, we need to understand that someone that is just listening to a screen reader, maybe it's not that clear that those are sub items. So to do that, to specify, to help them understand that is a sub menu, we are using ARIA as pop-up through. So we are saying, yes, there is a drop down, and then we are saying ARIA expanded false, just to say that is expanding only when we hover or click on it. And then second thing about this is just something about styling. Um, it's recommended to use recognized design patterns to distinguish menus and the state of the item. So that means hover, active, visited. So it's good, especially for elements so important. It's really helpful. Don't that doesn't mean that you cannot be creative, but if there's a recognized pattern for menus, it's recommended to stick to those, just because the users are used to find the formation in a certain way. If those patterns are somehow not respected, they possibly spend some time, staring your screen and wondering what they should do, which is not what we want. And then, yep, the third point we already mentioned, the fly out menus. I call them drop down, but yeah, we already check how we can uh, uh, label them. Let's jump now on my favorite bit, which is how to add an appropriate alt. So I have to say that this this part already said that before, but this part really blew my mind. I didn't know that I was doing that in the wrong way until I hit this tutorial. So I put some examples in here. I hope that they will help you to follow the explanations. So we can use the images to deliver different messages. So we can use an image because it's informative. So it's actually delivering a message. It's enriching the content. It's part of the content. Or it could be only a decorative image. So it doesn't have any meaning, really. It's just there because it's looking good, basically. We can have functional images. So what you can see on the screen, which is like that printer icon, that could be a functional image because it's doing an action. That means if we click on it, it's actually doing something. So that's a functional image. And then we can have images containing text. Now, let's start with the first one. So we have that dog uh, just staring the horizon. And in this, that image, it really depends on the context. If that image was uh, I don't know, it's just a random dog, and sometimes we can use that as a decorative image. But in this case, for example, that's a dog, a guide dog, and let's say we are using that in a website about guide dogs. So that image is really helping the user to, yeah, just adding that additional information around dog. It's not decorative. um, so how we can it's working together with the text next to it to uh, explain and to show the guide dogs. So we need an alt text. And the example on the right side, so we have a paragraph. Inside of a paragraph, there's an image. And then in the image, we are using the alt attribute and the alt text. So the alt attribute is alt equal, and alt text is the text inside the double quotes. So the alt text is, as you can see, is short and is quite dry, and it's just saying what it is. For example, it's not starting with this photo is a dog, this picture is representing a dog. There's no need in specifying that is an image because the screen reader will hit the image tag first. So it will be able to say, this is an image. So that for that reason, there's no need to say again on the alt text, this is an image. Otherwise, the screen reader will read, this is an image about a dog, which is, which could be, if you think about of how many images we are using on websites. So if you just multiply this experience for all of the images on a website, you can understand that could be annoying after a while. So we just say what it is. It's a dog with a bell attached to its collar. We are not saying anything like it's a dog staring the horizon, just laying on the green grass. So there's no need of additional information. Again, we need to understand that the purpose of the alt text is not saying or listing all the things in the image, but just the ones that we want to deliver. Okay, so if you imagine to describe this image to a friend that is on another room, you're going to say, hey, there's a dog with a bell attached to its collar, isn't it? You're not going to listing everything in the image, just the piece of information that you think are important. Now, what if we have a decorative image? What if we have like this palm on on the second example? So in here, this image is there just because it's looking good. It's not really important. So the right thing to do in here is don't add any alt text. And this really, when I I knew that, I was so surprised. So that doesn't mean that you don't need to add the alt attribute. As you can see, we are still adding the alt attribute, but there's no value inside of it. So the alt attribute should always be there, but it's possible that for some examples, we don't need to add any value in it. And this is the case. So if it's a decorative image, it's not giving any important information to the user, you can skip the alt text, but you still need the alt attribute. Right, what if we have a functional image like this printer icon? This is when you click on this image, is going to do an action, is going to trigger the print panel. And therefore, instead of using the alt to describe the image, we use the alt to describe the action. So for example, we are saying print this page. So again, found that really surprising, but it totally makes sense. And the last example, yeah, if we have images with text, instead of describing what it is, you need to only add the text that that is on the image. So in this case, hello. Now, the next thing, so with the images, we completed the web accessibility tutorials coming from W3C. As I said, there are 3 more, and you can take a look at them on the website. So as we said, we're going to send you the link. And there will be examples of more complex elements, like, for example, carousels, forms, tables. But because the code and the complexity of the object is a bit more, I think you need more time to absorb, and the MOOC wasn't the right place where to explore those kind of tutorials. Um, but we will explore some more. The following two, so colors and then the next one, are more related to design, but I still think that it's important to point them out because in the end, even if we are not design, even if some of us are developers, I don't know if there are any designers today in this MOOC. But even if as developers we don't decide the colors, it's still, again, it's everyone's responsibility to know that we should check for accessible colors, and there are tools ready for us to help in this way. First thing is we should avoid to use color alone to convey information. That's because we some of our users could be colorblind, or maybe they have a low vision. So if we are relying only on color to highlight a link, for example, that means that it could be easy for them to uh, don't notice that piece of information, don't notice that that's a link. So that's why is recommended to don't rely only on color, but maybe combine the color with something else, like for example the underline, an icon, a border, as per the example on the right side. The first link is only using color, and the second example is using color and underline. So in that way, if they cannot see the change of color, at least they will notice the underline, and um, it will be like an information that will say, oh, possibly this is the link, and they will hover on it. Um, Now, how the second thing is, how do there are we need to remember and know that there are combination of colors that together are not working right. So let's take like a dumb example. If we use white text on white background, well, no contrast, it's impossible to read it. So the contrast is not there. Now, that was, of course, a stupid example, but we need to be aware that there are other colors that for people with low vision or color blind is giving the same result as white on white. And to make sure that we are not using a color scheme that is not doesn't have the right contrast, we can use tools as per the WebAM contrast checker. There is also a more specific one for links, which is the WebAM link contrast checker, where, as you can see on the screenshot at the bottom, on the foreground color, you add the hexacode of the text, and on the background color, you add the hexacode of the background. And then on the right side, it will tell you if the contrast ratio is working fine. It's going to give you also more information. I invite you to go and check the tool. It's really helpful because sometimes we don't realize that, for example, blue text on white, for me it's readable, but the contrast ratio could be better if it was black on white. So that doesn't mean that we should avoid using blue or red from now on, but we should be mindful that it depends also on the font size. If the size is very big, uh, then it's going to be readable even if it's red on white. But if you're using a font size really small, then maybe it's better to avoid red and using maybe another color. Again, this tool is going to help you understand which font size, which color is working better for which for the font size you want to use. So it will help you in, find the right combination. And then about the other topic is typefaces and text in general. Um, so there's no such thing as accessible typeface or font. When I came across to this area, to this topic, that was actually the first thing that I was searching, like accessible typefaces. And I found out that there's no the perfect one. However, there are typefaces that work better. Um, and the ones that are working better on different sizes and are more, the letters are more defined and readable, are the ones that you can see on the right side. So Arial, Verdana, Tahoma, Times New Roman, and so on. So why they are better than others? Well, just because there's the right space between the letters. It's easy to distinguish the letters between them. So all of these characteristics may make the typeface more accessible than others. Maybe will surprise you that Comic Sans MS, that all of us are, especially the designers. Maybe you came across to some memes that were saying, "Oh, Comic Sans is the worst." Well, actually, Comic Sans has been invented for people with dyslexia, so it seems that it's quite easy for them to read Comic Sans compared to other typefaces. So Comic Sans, in the end, it's not that bad. We just have to use it in the right context, I guess. And then other suggestions around typefaces is try to use simple typefaces without too many serifs. Maybe you can use them for like big text, short text, but not for the main, for the body of the content. Avoid character with ambiguity and complexity. So there's an example on the right side. For example, the first C versus O. As you can see, the C is very closed. It's almost could be confused with an O, especially if the font size is small. While the second example is more clear because the C is more different from an O. You need to consider that maybe in here it's quite visible, but let's say this is on a display, in the train station, and it's very far away. It's easy to maybe confuse a C with an O if the letters are not that distinguishable as per the example here. Um, and then don't use too many typefaces. The standard, well, the rule, if there is a rule, is use two typeface, not more than two typefaces. Um, and if you need to add some more, you need a good reason for do that. You can, but you need to ask to yourself, do I really need it? And then consider spacing between the letters, the weight, so how it works when you make it bold, how it works when you make it light. and avoid small font sizes if you can. 16 font size, 16, 18 is even better. Now I can see that more and more the websites are using bigger and bigger font sizes, which is quite good. At least you don't have to keep, using Control or Command plus to zoom the text. And then about the text, try to avoid the center and justified alignment. I know that for some of us is a big temptation. That's because we have this idea that justify alignment is more neat, and it's just make everything neat and shiny. However, for especially for people with dyslexia, is hard to read. It's making difficult to read when the text, all the lines are the same length. um, and I have to say that now that I'm used to read more on screen than on a magazine, I noticed the difference, and I actually prefer when it's not justified. Now that I'm used to have the alignment on the left side, I find it easier. Way easier to go through the different lines. I can distinguish the text way more easily. And then avoid underlined text. By saying that is like, we use underline pretty much for links. So if you're using underlined, the pattern is that usually an underlined text is a link. So if it's not a link, I'm hovering on that and then I find out it's not a link. It could be misleading. Uh, and then use space to set the content apart. Don't be afraid to do that. It's just making easier to understand that it's starting a new part of the page, and then go for short lines. Again, it's making the text more readable. Now, the tutorials are completed. And now we can go for our quick demo on how you can test your website. So first we go through what you can do to test a website. And then I will try to show you two of these tools. One is Wave, and the second one is Headings Map. Um, so to understand, to check what you are doing right and what needs improvement, there are a few tools and methods that you can use. So the first one is using the validator, the markup validation service from W3C. You can either copy and paste your HTML in the website. So on the right side, there's the screenshot of the W3C validation service. So you can either add the link of your page, or you can upload a file, or you can copy and paste in the direct input. Once you click on check, it's going to give you like a report that is saying, giving you where there are errors and what you can do to fix it. So it will give you also suggestions. And then you can test your website by using only the keyboard. So you can try to avoid using your mouse. I know that it will be awkward at first. It was for me. And then try to navigate your website only by keyboard. If the main key that I use is Tab, and then Shift Tab to go back. But if you want to go further, understand what else you can do with the keyboard, there are plenty of tutorials online. Depends if you also if you are a Windows or iOS user, but most of them are matching, so you'll be fine. And then you can use the screen reader. Last time, so 2 days ago, we went through a demo on how you can get VoiceOver on Apple and NVDA for Windows, and you can listen to what the screen reader is able to read and what is skipping. And then you can install two plugins on your browser. They are available for Firefox and Google Chrome. One is Wave and one is Headings Map. We will check them in 2 minutes. And then you can test the website on a desktop, tablet, and smartphone. Portrait and landscape orientation on your tablet or phone. And then you can test it on different browsers and operating systems. I know that the last three, it's something that as front-end developers is already a practice, because you need to see if it's breaking in different operating system in different browsers. So those last three shouldn't be a surprise or like any additional work for you. Possibly it's something you're already doing. And now we can just go, and I will show you how to use Wave and Headings Map. So I will get, yes, the Wave. This is the page where you can download the Wave extension, either for Chrome or Firefox. So I will install it for Chrome. So I will click here and just add into Chrome. And yeah, and I will have here yes, just there. And then we can do the same for Headings Map. And I will add the extension Headings Map. And now we will see how to use them. So first, well, let me also pin them so that I can have them always available. Yeah, okay, good. So now they are there. And first we will check how we can use Wave. So we'll click on Wave, and after clicking, Wave is just ready to go, right? So what we will see is a kind of live report on the page. What is doing is going through the page and check what we are doing right and what we should improve. So, for example, well, I picked this website in purpose because they took good care of accessibility. So as you can see, there are no errors, which is, I would say, quite rare, having 0 errors. Um, and then there are contrast errors, however, and there are a few alerts, but it's also good because it's telling you what we are doing good. So the features. If you want to understand, so this is just the overview. If you click on details, it will give you some more information. So it will tell you what you're not doing good. So for example, it's checking also the contrast, the color contrast. And if you click in here, it will tell you, it will give you like a good idea of what you are not doing good, why it's important, and also this is really precious, how to fix it, right? So it's going to tell you a possible solution to do that. And then it will also here give you the guidelines coming from W3C Web Accessibility Initiative. However, when I have to check the contrast, I go and use that other tool that I mentioned you, the Web IM contrast color, and I just go there and check, the right combination, and then I go back to my code and change it. So you can have the report as a list, or if you scroll the page and you click on this, you will have also this pop-up telling you, like, you know, giving you the piece of code that it's analyzing, and also telling you giving you the reference, and it will open the reference just on the left side. So I found this really helpful, and it's quite complete. So that was the first one. Yeah, one thing is doing this check page by page. So it's not doing this for the whole website. When you click on the W, it will run the check on the page that you are. Right, I didn't mention that at the beginning. Now we'll take a look on the second tool, and the second tool is heading maps. And heading maps is good to don't get lost in the headings hierarchy. So if you click on heading maps, it will give you a more visual representation of the hierarchy of your headings. So it will tell you what's the H1, and it will, when you click on that, it will also highlight it with that red rectangle. And then, yeah, it's doing the same for all the H2. And then it will tell you inside of these H2 responses, there are all these H3s. And so again, I had to search for a while to find a good structure. Even the magazines or not all the blogs are doing this properly. Most of them are skipping the headings. Maybe they have H2 and then they go straight away to H5, for example. So this is helpful to avoid. This page is quite long, it's quite full of headings, and it's easier by using this tool to get the structure, the uh, hierarchy, and check if you are skipping any level. So these two are the tools that I wanted to show you. Now I will jump back to the presentation. But if I remember well, we should be almost there at the end of the presentation. Yeah, so right, after the demo, the summary of what we went through today is use the most semantic HTML element for the job. I know that some of the tutorials, if it was the first time that you were coming across them, could be a lot. Um, and the first reaction is like, this is going to add even more work to what I'm already doing. But that's just because it's the first time. It's the first time that even when I came across to like adding these role attributes and everything that was going over semantic HTML, it was like, okay, it's good, but I need to, uh, consider, estimate that additional time to make it accessible. But I realized that I thought that because it was the first time that I came across, and I didn't knew that before, and my project was already going on, and that's why I had to go back and try to make it right. But if once you know that, well, you're going to build the project straight away with this information, because you already know where to go, where to check, what to check, especially. Um, so the first thing that you can do right is using semantic HTML. It's not going to add much time, and at least you will make sure that the website, the foundation, is right, is and it's solid, and after that you'll be able to uh, build on top of that. Then I encourage you to consult the web tutorials on the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative website. They are really clear. They give clear examples. So it helped me a lot, and I go often to check what should I do. There are also additional resources over there. Um, then third thing, this is an easy one, but please don't use color alone to convey information. Use also shapes, borders, underlines, and you're going to make sure that everyone will just get that information, and it will be highlighted properly. Avoid, this is another easy one, avoid center and justified alignment on text, and then test your website on different devices, different browsers, and then also by only using keyboard, and give it a go with a screen reader. And then, yes, we will share all of these. So all the tools that we mentioned, all the links we mentioned, we will send them over with an email. There will be also information like people to follow on Twitter, and also books or meetups that you can follow. So hopefully it will be like in there, in that list of links, you will have enough material to start learn a bit more. So I think that's, yeah, that's all for today, and we are ready for some Q&A if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Fabiana. That was fantastic. I was particularly interested to learn about the things to consider when using images, and also about not underlining text. I thought
Yeah.
that was so fascinating. As Fabiana said, we have some time for Q&A, so please do put your questions as a comment. In the meantime, I have one, if you don't mind, which would be, is there something that you learnt during these tutorials that particularly surprised you?
Well, I have to say that especially um, because things like, for example, also when I went through like menus, I get that menus is like an important piece of the website. So I was kind of prepared, in learning more, knowing more. But when it was the time of images, I was like, okay, I'm already doing that right. I'm adding the alt text. What else there's there to say? So that part, the image part, was the one that most surprised me. And also, I realized I was doing a really bad job. I was adding not useful information, boring. And I was like, I'm doing this so wrong. And I didn't know that. Um, and what else about the tutorial? So we went through the page structure was still okay, was already using. semantic HTML. That the part around the roles, how to use the roles, I have to say that that was new. And at first I thought, is this really necessary? I mean, already using semantic HTML, it seems like an additional step that it's not really helpful. But then I found out that we are doing that because some assistive technologies, we need to consider that some assistive technologies, they are quite expensive. And so for people that are investing in that, then it's not easy to say, okay, there's a new one, I will buy that. So it could easily be that those operating system inside of them, they are not the most updated, and maybe they don't have they don't uh, they cannot be able to read HTML5. So that was another part that was like, at the beginning I was like, maybe I don't really need it. And then I said no, I, I have to.
I think that's one of the most amazing things about a career in technology is there's always something new to learn or something new to discover, which is just
Yeah.
fantastic. On that note, one final question from me. What would be your top piece of advice for someone wanting to move into front-end development?
Um, well, if I have to combine what we discussed today with the front end developer role, uh, I would say that if you're new in front end development, if you start learning, uh, uh, how to build a web page by taking care of accessibility, I would say that everything would make so much more sense, because the HTML5 is has been created to think about accessibilities. Accessibility is included, is part of it, and we are using all those different tags because exactly because it's helping accessibility. So that means that who created HTML5 tags? So the W3C Foundation, and therefore the W3C Foundation is created by Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web. So if they put so much effort on those and they are using them and they really thought about them carefully, um, and I would say that if, especially if you're new, because if you're already doing this for many years, like it's 20 years that you're doing this job, maybe when you were learning about HTML, there weren't so many, and now there are so many frameworks that you can use, and they are using most of them divs, only divs, not not all the other tags that we are available. um, Maybe it's more difficult to, or maybe you're not aware, let's say you're just not aware that by not using the right tag, you are preventing someone to access to your content. So if I have to give you a suggestion, is like, if you are a front-end developer, go and check how you can use HTML5 to make your life easier. um, you will thank yourself later on.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. I think with that, it's probably a good time to wrap up the session. I would like to say a big thank you to Fabiana for her wonderful presentation and insights throughout this session and the previous one. Also, thank you to Cognizant Foundation for supporting this session, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. As Fabiana mentioned, there will be resources emailed out after this session. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.